Hello, my name is Lisa Ann Cockrel, and I am an acquisitions editor here at Eerdmans. And it's my great pleasure to be here today with John West, author of our forthcoming book, Lessons and Carols, A Meditation on Recovery. John is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and also has an MFA from Bennington College, where he wrote the first draft of this project. This is also, I'll mention a little personal aside, this is the first book I acquired after joining Eerdmans. So it's a great pleasure for me to kind of get to see my first book out into the world, which is John's first book, actually. Let's be clear. But I wanted to get into it by explaining the title a little bit, John. So Lessons and Carols is an Episcopalian Christmas service, but I wonder if you could say more about that for people who are not familiar with that tradition.
Sure, yeah. It might sound obvious, but it is lessons and carols. The lessons are readings from the Bible, starting with Adam and Eve, ending with that reading from John, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And historically, I think it was the late 19th century, E.W. Benson, who would go on to be the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is the highest office in the Anglican Church, was worried because his cathedral was like under construction or renovation. I'm not quite sure. And he was very worried that everyone was going to go out drinking on Christmas. And so he put together this exciting lessons and carols because thinking that would persuade his parishioners not to
bring in the crowds during construction.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think this is all a little hazy, but I'm pretty sure that like they read it. Like they had each lesson was read by a different kind of member of the church, starting with him, I think it ended with someone from the laity. So it really kind of went down the offices.
Okay.
And so it was kind of an interactive thing. And then everyone was singing the carols, which is always fun. So I guess it worked. Later in World War I, it came back. King's College in Cambridge put it on and adapted organ and choir and did a whole like production of it. And then that kind of started. I don't know if it was initially aired on the radio, but it was aired on the radio, and then people got really into it, and it kind of hopped from church to church and became a big deal. Which is how I first came across it at my childhood church, which is Congregationalist, not Anglican, but we were theologically promiscuous. Is that a thing? I don't know.
Sure. I hope so.
So very into kind of interfaith stuff, and so we did the 9 lessons and carols. We actually did 5, I think, not 9, but what are you gonna do? Apparently 4 of them didn't make the cut. But we did the lessons and carols at our church, and I was the organist choir master's assistant. I played music and was the assistant organist choir master, so I kind of got a bird's eye view of how the music worked, and that was lovely. And they always did kind of both old works that everyone loved, but also new works, and I thought it was so great. And then in college, my last year of college, I put on, or my second to last year of college, I started doing an annual tradition where we enacted the 9 lessons and carols ourselves. I wrote a kind of tongue-in-cheek, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, somewhat very serious kind of adaptation of the lessons where everyone has a part. So it's like a pageant kind of, and everyone has a part. And I played the keyboard and we all sang, and it was a lot of fun. And every year it's gotten a little bit crazier and more out of hand in terms of how much work I put into it. And it's been 13 or 14, 15, somewhere, I don't know, some number of years, more than a decade of doing that. And it's been a lot of fun. So
every year with your friends still.
Every year with your friends, yeah.
That's fantastic. The book is called Lessons and Carols, A Meditation on Recovery. And, it's funny, I didn't know that the original origin story about that piece about the future Archbishop of Canterbury being afraid of people going out drinking on Christmas, given that this book actually kind of like grapples with sobriety. There's actually another layer of like it being apropos there. But talk to us a little bit about the structure for this book and how, like, why it has that title, Lessons and Carols, and how that maps onto your kind of the story you're telling in this book.
Yeah. So, I think like Lessons and Carols is something that I do every year. And that's the important facet of this. And this is kind of why it ended up becoming the root of this. I think, first of all, the Christmas story means a lot to me. I think there's a lot of kind of, it's a rich tradition. There's a lot there, but also it's a thing that happens every year. And I think that the story I wanted to tell was one that didn't really have this tidy arc of like, things were bad and then they got better. Instead, I wanted to illustrate this kind of cyclical nature of kind of how I understand addiction, how I understand struggles with mental health, how I understand most things, frankly,
Mhm.
kind of it moves in cycles as opposed to being like a clean kind of linear path. And so it felt really natural to build it around the lessons and carols as this kind of like cycle of things that happens once a year. Each section in the book is kind of a lesson or carol, a lesson, and then there are carols. But actually do tell over the course of those, kind of come back, keep coming back to the actual enacting of the ceremony that I do with my friends.
Yeah. And describe for us, for those who haven't read about your book yet or haven't seen it, what the story is that you're telling. How someone who doesn't know, how do you say what the book is about?
Lisa, you should know better than to ask a question like that of an author. We're terrible.
We're working on your elevator pitch here.
We're going, yeah, do it live. So the book is kind of an exploration of, I call it an essay. Some people call it a memoir, somewhere between essay and memoir, about addiction, art, liturgy, and loss. And those are kind of the four threads that run through the book. It tells the story of my own struggles with addiction and mental health. It also talks a lot about people that I know who have passed away or disappeared. It also grapples with, I think, the Christmas story and what that can mean and bring resonance to our own lives. And it touches a lot on kind of the power of poetry, the power of the kind of written word in understanding oneself and one's environment.